101.3 FM, The Source.
Our next guest has been with us before, and there must be some reason why this guy always hits it out of the ballpark. This is so time appropriate, too, by the way. His new book is called The Bishop's Pawn. Did I not mention his name? Steve Berry is on the phone. Is he in St. Augustine, Robin? That rings a bell, right?
Yeah. I don't know if he's there today.
Steve Berry is an historian. He's the co-founder of History Matters, a foundation dedicated to historic preservation. He's an attorney. He is the first spokesman for National Preservation Week, a member of the Smithsonian Institution Libraries Advisory Board. If I read all his credentials, we wouldn't have time for an interview. Again, the book is called The Bishop's Pawn. I can tell you this, it is currently #1 as a bestseller on Amazon in more than one category. It's just really, really doing well. Let's say good morning to Steve Berry. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Nice to have you back. Nice to have me back.
Yes, sir.
I am in St. Augustine today.
Okay, yes. You've spoken to us before. I don't know if you keep track of all your radio people, but
I remember.
No, good. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed on the 4th of April, so this Wednesday is the anniversary of that. Does the book, does it serve as an alternate story or a theory on what might have happened differently than what we've been told?
A little bit of an alternate explanation. There are so many unanswered questions to the murder of Martin Luther King. The investigation was pretty much botched from the beginning, and there are tons of questions that were never answered, and they never will be answered, by the way, because everyone's dead who participated back then, and all the evidence is long cold. So I look at it from a little bit of a different perspective, and I try to answer those questions, and they are answered in a little bit of a shocking way. But most of the novel, 90% of the novel, I keep as close to reality as I possibly can, because I wanted to remind the readers about what happened back then, what we don't know about it, and it's all done in the context of an adventure with Cotton Malone, so you'll be able to, you'll get a full breadth of the problem, but you'll also be entertained with the excitement.
Did James Earl Ray die without ever having confessed?
Yeah, he actually did confess. He pled guilty to the murder. Then 3 days later, he recanted the confession,
right,
and spent 29 years, telling one story after another. Right. Ray was a pathological liar. He never told the same story twice. So there was nothing productive that ever came from James Earl Ray.
Okay.
Yeah.
So therefore, wouldn't we just believe he did it, or?
Well, that's where I went in the novel. I didn't go with the second shooter, but you could make a very good argument and a very convincing argument that there was another shooter here. There's a lot of unanswered questions that could point that way. I chose not to go there. I wanted to explore this in another way, so I dealt with some of the other unanswered questions, the most important of which is, why was King murdered? We have no clue as to why he was murdered, and this book attempts to answer that question.
Do you think that Hoover had a role in it?
Well, we'll never know. We actually will never know, and people will say, well, it sounds crazy that Hoover would be involved in it. No, it's not, actually. Hoover had a deep, visceral hatred of Martin Luther King. He spent 5 years trying to destroy the man. He did everything he could to try to destroy the man. Hoover was not above ordering violence and ordering things to be happen. He had no problem destroying people. Today, J. Edgar Hoover would be in prison if he had done those things. We would put him in jail, but it was a different time back in the 60s, and he got away with a lot.
And listening back to Martin Luther King Jr.'s words and his message, it's almost hard to believe that anybody didn't go along with what he was trying to accomplish. And so I don't understand what the political ramifications would be for Hoover, or or was it simply a racist attitude he had? What do you think?
Well, Hoover was a racist. There's no question. We know that for a fact. He was a racist and a bigot. But Hoover's hatred of King was silly, actually. King had insulted the FBI in 1963, and he insulted Hoover. And Hoover tried to talk to King. He wanted to have a meeting with him to try to see if he could work things out. And he left several phone calls, which King never returned. And Hoover took that as a direct personal affront to him. And that's when it all started. That's when the war started against King. He had all those around him could not describe it. It was an obsession that he had with King, the hatred that he had. Now, he hated the civil rights movement because he thought it a communist plot. He thought it was all Moscow trying to undermine the United States government, even though the FBI itself issued a report in 1961 that said there is no evidence of any connection between the civil rights movement and communism. He actually ordered that report altered and the conclusions changed to fit his own beliefs. Hoover was a strange guy, but he was a strange guy in charge of the largest police force in America.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And was Hoover responsible for the audio tapes for Martin Luther King Jr.'s infidelity?
Absolutely, absolutely. He ordered full surveillance of King. Some was authorized. Most was not, and he spent 5 years taping, following, photographing King, most of it, again, illegal. The tapes were eventually sent to King's home, and Coretta, his wife, listened to them. To her credit, she refused to allow Hoover to destroy her marriage. She was not going to allow him to win, but it did cause King a lot of problems. He actually sent a note to King, a written note that suggested that King should kill himself. The note is in the novel. Now, the FBI says we didn't really mean for him to kill himself. We meant for him to quit the civil rights movement.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
You read it and tell me what you think.
Yeah.
I mean, it pretty much says to me, I mean, I got the message loud and clear. But, even so, it just shows you the lengths they went to with King, and it showed Hoover's obsession with him.
The Cotton Malone, the character that you created, is this the first time he has actually been interjected into a real-life scenario?
No. Most of let's put it this way: the real life scenario closest to present day, yes. This is as close as it comes. This is history I actually lived through.
Yeah.
So yes, it is the most immediate novel of Cotton. But all of my novels deal with something from history, something real, and I keep it 90% to history, as close as I can. This one is different because it's much more modern. It's so close to us.
I see.
Why was there such a rivalry between King and Malcolm X?
Well, there was a rivalry between the civil rights leaders because they had difference of opinions of how to accomplish the same thing. King was nonviolent. He had a nonviolent message, and what happened is towards the end of his life, in the last year of his life, that message was beginning to fall on deaf ears. There was a younger, more violent wing of the civil rights movement that was taking over things. Mm-hmm. It bothered King. He had a very tough time the last year of his life. He was in a state of depression most of that time. He had lost the president's ear when he came out against the Vietnam War. He lost the white establishment because they said, why are you in this political stuff with the war? He lost the black establishment because they said the same thing. Why are you in this with the war? He was drinking too much. He was smoking too much. He was gaining weight. He had a tough time the last year of his life. And that's all amplified and described in the novel.
One of the things we pick on with our presidents especially is reading from the, what is that monitor called again? The
Christian Science Monitor?
No.
Oh, okay.
The one in front of them. What's that thing called? Teleprompter.
Oh, the teleprompter.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
The Christian Science Monitor.
I'm thinking about
but anyway, let me make my point. My point is that we are more impressed with a leader, whether it's a president or anybody, who can kind of speak off the cuff. Martin Luther King did that the night before he was assassinated. Not that it was the first time he did it, because I think the "I Have a Dream" speech, the memorable part, was all improvised also, and I think that speaks to the true intent of his whole life. I think this was him.
Oh, very much so. He was a magnificent communicator, and that's what made him so effective. They picked the perfect person to be the point man because he was so good at it. And the mountaintop speech that he gives on the night before he dies is a perfect example of that. I encourage your listeners to go and find it on the internet and read it or watch it. It's not very long, about 30 minutes. When you're watching it, realize something. He's making up every word as he's saying it. He has no prepared remarks. He was sick that night. He had gone to bed early. He was not even supposed to come speak. And he speaks for 30 minutes about mortality, his own mortality. And it's very eerie when you listen to it because it sounds just like a man who knows he's about to die.
Yes, I have heard it, and you're right. It does sound like that.
It sounds just like it. It's eerie when you listen to it. And that's where the novel came from. That's where the idea of the novel came from about 10 years ago. And I held this story to this year because I knew this would be a topic we'd be talking about now.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's amazing. The book is called, I wanted to, where's the title on the book?
It's the second
Bishop's
page.
Pawn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, see, it's the front.
No, I know it's the Bishop's Pawn, but
There's
the
two.
book they sent us doesn't have the cover on the cover.
Well, you have the advanced reader's copy. It's a little different.
All right, the Bishop's Pawn. So now, who's the bishop? Is it?
Well, that's a good question. But Bishop's him. Bishop is Martin Luther King. The pawn, not so clear. You think it's one, but there's a little surprise there.
Okay.
The Bishop's pawn is a chess move, but I didn't use it as a chess move in this book. It's the code name for the FBI operation that's involved here.
Oh.
And so I didn't want to put King in the title because I knew there'd be a ton of books out right now, and all of them would have King in the title. And I've already done a book with King in the title, The King's Deception. So I wanted my title to be a little more esoteric, a little bit.
I think you've accomplished that because I love something that you don't really see it right away. There's some air of mystery about it.
That was what I was going for, a little double meaning in this title.
Mm-hmm.
Did you grow up in the South?
I did, in Georgia. I lived in Georgia all my life, and we moved to St. Augustine about 8 years ago.
Okay, I love the fact that I can use you as an example of something you hear every now and then from people who've never been to the South or who think the South is completely or the white people in the South are completely racist. I will always say that is not true. I meet so many people who are old enough to remember the trials and tribulations of the segregation times. I even when I first moved here in 1972, there was a bar in Dunellen, which I don't know if you know where that is, that had a separate entrance for blacks and a separate one for whites, and that was 1972.
Yeah, I remember separate entrances. I remember water fountains, bathrooms. I remember segregation in the '60s in Atlanta, and but we came through that and we changed, and we the South. I agree with you. Yes, the South we were not no saints and all. I mean, we had our our tough times and our bad things that we did, but we came through it and we made our adjustments. But let's face it now, the North was not any great bastion of liberalism. Now they had their problems with segregation and integration as well.
No.
Everyone had their problems with it, and we came through it. We've made great progress. The question is, is there more to do? And the book leaves with a positive message on that question.
Oh, awesome! I like that. All right, tell me about your in creating a fictional storyline regarding a factual historic event.
Huh?
Is that a delicate thing? Do you have to really are you really careful about where you take a story as far as the fictional part of it goes?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm very careful about it because the niche I've carved for myself is that my books and my stories are about 90% to history. I keep them as close to reality as I can. Now, that 10% that I have to trip it up is for entertainment purposes because my job as a novelist is to entertain you.
Right.
But I put the writer's note in the back of all of my books that tells you exactly where I did that and so you'll know. I don't want someone leaving the book thinking something's false or true when it's not. And so I spend a lot of time on that writer's note. It's there to read when you're done. It will fill in the gaps for you.
And going back to James Earl Ray, he was very elusive. He was able to travel all over the world before being captured. How come he was able to do that?
That's a good question, and that's one of those questions that was never answered. This is where Hoover didn't bother with that. Ray shoots King. manages to elude a all-points bulletin for his car, gets out of Memphis, gets to Atlanta, buys a fake Canadian passport, goes to Canada, goes to England, goes to Portugal, goes back to England, and is finally caught by accident 60 days after the fact. Now, how in the world did he pull all that off without some help? He had no money. He had no nothing. How did he do all of that? It begs the question, and it was never investigated and never answered.
And I always wonder, when you have so much evidence that there might have been a conspiracy to something, and I'm not a conspiracy nut or whatever they call people who, but when you have so much evidence, like in this case, I don't understand why you just discounted with the word nut. I don't mean you, but I mean all of us. I mean all of us. I mean, we have this. Okay, you have all this evidence, and yet you're not even acknowledging that there's evidence.
Because Hoover didn't want that. Hoover hated King, but he wanted credit for catching King's killer. He was very much a guy who wanted credit for everything. He wanted the FBI to have credit for it. So he focused them on one thing and one thing only, and he said, don't worry about anything else. That's our guy. Get him. And they did. They eventually got him, again, by accident, not anything they did. And they got him, but they never looked at anything else. And then on the eve of trial, Ray changes his not guilty plea to guilty, and there was no need to have a trial. By the way, if they had tried James Earl Ray, he would have been acquitted. There was no evidence.
Really?
No, there was no evidence to convict him at all. There was no murder weapon. There was nothing to connect him with anything. There was nothing to put him in the rooming house other than one witness who came forward 3 months after the fact and admitted he was blind drunk at the time. Doesn't remember, it was a defense lawyer's dream to try that case.
Wow.
Yet he pleads guilty, and then 3 days later recants that plea. We will never know to this day why he pled guilty. It's never been explained. All the participants are gone.
You explained it by saying he was a liar. I mean, that to me says everything. Maybe he thought he was going to have accolades for it or something.
The best guess is he was told that George Wallace was going to be the next president, and Wallace would pardon him. There's discussions that went on at the time about that, but again, we'll never know. Ray just changes his plea, and he had one of the finest defense lawyers in America, a man named Percy Foreman. He was ready to go, and as I said, it would have been a not guilty verdict, but of course, Hoover couldn't have that. There's no way in the world he could have that.
Was there any point that Martin Luther King Jr. was warned to not attend?
Yes.
Not be there?
Well, he was told that Memphis was a problem. He was told to watch himself. He was told to stay out of the public view unless absolutely necessary. Yet he walks out on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel and stands in plain sight, elevated up on that balcony for 12 minutes. Quite amazing, isn't it?
Wow.
Another unanswered question.
Steve Berry is our guest. His new book is called The Bishop's Pawn. You have the phones ringing off the hook. Would you like to talk to some of your fans?
It's up to you. Sure.
Okay, let's take the first one. I already have one waiting in the wings. Good morning. You're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning, Larry. This is Mike. I think you addressed my question. It's the question on the conspiracy. I lived during that era, so my question is, why didn't some of Martin Luther King's colleagues go out on that balcony first to see and make sure it was safe? The second thing is I'm thinking about a conspiracy is somebody had to know that James Earl Ray was in that room across the way. Somebody had to know he was there. So somebody told Martin Luther to go out and get a smoke on the balcony. And it was just a clear shot. He was out there by himself.
Oh.
Nobody with that high profile would walk out on a balcony in the middle of the night like that by himself with no bodyguards or anything else. Same thing with Bobby Kennedy. Who knew that Sirhan was in that kitchen? So there was a lot of conspiracy going on during that era.
Oh, my God.
I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, Mike.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I hadn't thought of that. So maybe somebody on Martin Luther King Jr.'s side was in on this. Is that a possibility, Steve?
Well, I mean, it makes great fodder for novels, but in reality what happened was King was getting dressed for dinner. He got dressed. Ralph Abernathy was getting dressed with him. They shared the room together. Ralph needed the bathroom to get ready. King goes out on the balcony and he stands there and he talks to his Jesse Jackson and Andrew Young and other people that are down below, and he just has a nice, pleasant conversation with these people for about 10 to 12 minutes out there, which is quite incredible that he does that when he was told not to do that. He was told not to go out there. So I don't think there was any. Certainly Ralph Abernathy didn't set him up. That was his closest friend in the whole world. But there's no evidence that anyone sent him out there. He just went out there, and they had a lovely conversation they were going on, and then of course one shot rings out. But whether someone could have been involved with it, that's an interesting question. And I asked him to I asked that listener to take a look at the Bishop's Pond.
Was Jesse Jackson part of Martin Luther King Jr.'s entourage at that point?
Yes, he was there, and he was down below as well, and so was Andrew Young, and so was several others who were down there. They were all downstairs. They were getting ready to go to dinner. They had cranked the car up. They were warming it up. King was up there. He was talking to them. He decides to go back to the room to get his coat. He turns around to go back to the room, and the shot rings out.
The irony, I don't know if I want to say the sad irony, because maybe, I don't know, it seems like in trying to silence a message, the killers, if there were plural, only amplified it. It seems like the message of Martin Luther King Jr. became louder from the very act of trying to silence that message.
That's exactly right. Exactly true. And the novel deals with that very premise right there. It's exactly what did happen, which is ironic because in the last year of King's life, things were not going very well for him, and his message was falling on deaf ears. But it changed dramatically after that. Now, America burned for about 90 days after that. And then around August or September of 68, it began to calm down, and everything stopped, and we moved back into a different direction.
When you were writing the book, did you yourself feel like you had any premonitions from Martin Luther King, any kind of nudgings?
No, I was looking more at the unanswered questions, and when you look at those, the answers to those questions sort of send you in a certain direction, and they really do send you in a certain direction because it's the only thing that makes some sense. And the novel has a shocking conclusion to it. There's a shock to this novel. It's not your run-of-the-mill conspiracy theory. It's very different. And it was designed to shock a little bit, to get readers to think and to get readers, to want to know more.
Wow. Again, I love the fact that you are so passionate about this, and it really does speak to an observation I've made a long time ago, is that any preconceived notions that from, I guess, white people in the North that think that white people in the South have always been racist, I don't think that's true. I think there was a social thing going on, and clearly there were racist people, but I don't think it was everybody. I think there were a lot of people who just didn't like the status quo and are very happy that things have changed for the better.
Absolutely. You never can say everybody is something. I mean, that's not right. I mean, I lived in the South all my life, and yes, we had our biases and our prejudices, and yes, we had our differences, but not everyone was violent rednecks trying to harm people. But they were out there. There's no question about it. They were out there, and there were a lot of them out there. But that changed. It really did. It changed. Now, has it changed completely? No, we still got ways to go, but we've made progress now. There's no denying we've made a lot of progress.
Your writing is very emotional because you really write books where it draws the reader in, and that really truly is opposite from your time as an attorney when you have to have nothing but hard, cold facts.
Yeah, and that's part of it. I mean, when you're trying a case, it's a story. A trial is a story, but it's a story based on the facts you have in front of you. You can't alter those in any way. A novel is a little bit fun because I can keep the facts, but I can also alter them a little bit where I want to. But the lawyer in me doesn't want to deceive you, so I always put that writer's note at the back to tell you where I do that.
And the thing I would worry about if I was your brother is, are you sure people aren't going to get mad at you for writing fiction about a factual thing?
Well, that's my niche. I like to keep it as close as I can. It's just sort of the niche I've carved for me.
Yeah. It's always great to speak to you, Steve. I have a copy of the book. It is what do you call this, an advanced copy?
Yes,
so
advanced readers.
I call it a collector's copy. So if you want the copy that was sent to me, please call me right now. I have one. I will leave it here at the station. You can come pick it up. The number is 622-9622. The rest of us have to go buy it. I found it on Amazon. It is a #1 book in several categories. Do you have a website? I know you do, Steve. What is your website?
SteveBerry.org. Everything's there.
SteveBerry.org. Steve Berry, thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. President Trump blaming Democrats for problems facing immigrants brought here illegally as children.
The president on Twitter is proclaiming the opportunity has gone past. He says DACA is dead because the Democrats didn't care or act, and now everyone wants to get onto the DACA bandwagon. He continues, no longer works. Must build wall and secure our borders with proper border legislation.
Fox's Kevin Corke. Democrats claim it's the president who never intended to help the so-called dreamers. Jury selection getting underway in Bill Cosby's sexual assault retrial. And a White House tradition going back to President Rutherford B. Hayes kicks off this morning.
It started in 1878, and a group of kids asked to roll their eggs in his backyard, which obviously was the South Lawn. And that was really the beginning of the Easter egg roll here at the White House.
Fox's Abby Huntsman. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Hi, this is Jack from Banyan Hill. You might have heard about that $34.6 billion that's expected to be doled out in what we call freedom checks. Huge checks that are changing people's lives from coast to coast. People like Sean from Pittsburgh. In fact, he's on the phone right now. Sean, you there?
Yes, I am, Jack.
Sean, let me ask you, how do you like getting these massive checks in your mailbox every month?
Well, Jack, we used to put stuff on credit cards living paycheck to paycheck. But now, after we started collecting a specific kind of freedom check, I have to say, life's a lot more fun.
I bet it is. In fact, getting massive freedom checks is fun no matter who you are. And with $34.6 billion expected to be paid out in private, non-government money starting as early as May 1st, now's the time to stake your claim on some cash. To get all the details, go to www.freedomchecks225.com before the May 1st deadline. That's www.freedomchecks225.com.
Council.
Is that couch cushion sinking lower every time you sit in it? Does your boat look better with the cover on? Has your car's interior seen its better days? Stop using a towel to cover up those rips in the golf cart. Isn't it about time you had it restored to better than new with a custom upholstery from Captain T? Captain T's upholstery has been right here in Ocala for nearly 20 years, so they know how to make your ride one of a kind. Whether you want to take that classic ride back to a factory look or put your favorite sports team front and center, Captain T's upholstery is who to call. 352-369-1810. That's 352-369-1810. Or stop by their location, 5030 South Pine Avenue in Ocala, just past the drive-in. And of course, don't forget to visit them on the web, CaptainTUpholstery.com.
The very best in quality is Captain T's Upholstery.
The College of Central Florida is committed to being your first choice for quality higher education. CF has locations in Marion, Citrus, and Levy counties and offers more than 60 academic programs. Earn a certificate, associate, or bachelor's degree. With Florida's 2+2 program, a student can complete an associate in arts at CF and be guaranteed admission to a state of Florida university. CF is ranked number 13 in the U.S. for affordability, is military friendly, and offers a full student life experience. Make CF your first choice. Call 352-873-5800.
Hello, gorgeous.
Hi,
Hi, this is Becky at Hello Gorgeous Salon. We are located in the heart of downtown Ocala, right next to the historic Marion Theater. I'd like to invite you to stop by and see our new boutique area and meet our staff of professional stylists. Here at Hello Gorgeous, we are ready to update your look with the latest trends. And with summer here, it's the perfect time to brighten up your look. So make your appointment now for those highlights and Brazilian blowout. But don't stop there. We are a full-service salon offering manicures, pedicures, and facials also. So if you've been searching for a salon to call your own,